Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fire! Pursuing truth. Torching idols, rebelling against the world. This is the HECKPHIRE Podcast.
Well, hello again. Welcome to another HECKPHIRE Podcast. I'm glad that you have taken the time to join us. And we are going to hit today on the podcast what has to be the least surprising decision in history. Maybe that's a bit much. How about the least surprising decision in presidential history? Even that may be a bit of a stretch, but that's what I'm going to call it anyway. And that is the decision that everybody's been talking about for the course of the last several days, well, since Sunday. The decision of our current outgoing president, Joseph Robinette Biden, to pardon his son, the troubled son, the prodigal son, whatever you want to call him, Hunter Biden. Now, keep in mind, Hunter Biden has gotten in trouble and has been convicted on a couple of charges, the federal felony gun charges and felony tax charges, things that you and I would go to jail for doing. That's what he's been convicted on. And one of the most remarkable things in the presidential pardon statement from Joseph Robinette Biden was his claim that all of this has been a political witch hunt. I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm still trying to figure out how it is that your Department of Justice, as in Joe Biden's Department of Justice, are engaged in a political witch hunt against Joe Biden's family. This isn't as though Donald Trump assumed the presidency and his Justice Department Pam Bondi goes after Hunter Biden. This was Merrick Garland and his crew. And that's what we're being told. That's who we're saying was engaged in this political witch hunt for Hunter Biden. I'm still trying to piece that together. And I know better than that. I really do. Trying to piece together logic, common sense, prudence, wisdom, sagacity when it comes to the antics of those in Washington, D.C. And of course, that is a respecter of no parties. Trying to figure out what folks are doing in either political party and make sense out of it, very difficult to do. But one of the things that struck me as I'm watching all this is the immediate backpedaling and the attempted cover of all of this. Here's why I'm saying this. I guess maybe I shouldn't make assumptions here of the listening audience. So Joe Biden announced after Hunter Biden's conviction that he was going to abide by those decisions of the courts, that he was not going to pardon his son. He had no desire to pardon. Well, I shouldn't say he had no desire. He had no inclination to pardon his son. That was never part of the idea. And there were those on the right that were saying, okay, that's a political tactic. Because if Joe Biden loses this election, presumably at the time, presumably to Donald Trump, if Joe Biden loses, the moment he loses to Donald Trump, he will never let Donald Trump assume the office. And then lose the ability to pardon Hunter if things look like he was really going to go to jail for a long period of time. If Joe Biden wins the election and he remains president, the odds of Hunter Biden ever going to jail very slim, and if it came to that, then he could pardon then. So that was always what was in the back of my head about the claim that he wasn't going to pardon his son. But of course, that claim was made for political purposes too. When you're running for president, you don't want to have this albatross around your neck. You don't want to have this giant weight around your neck dragging you down of I'm pardoning my son for his felony convictions. That looks tacky, looks bad. Presidents want to do something like that on their way out the door, which is obviously what Joe Biden did. But the claim, the statement that I'm not going to do it, of course, is only going to help Joe Biden politically if his friends in the media run with it. And run with it they did. If you question that, take a listen if you're listening. Take a look if you're watching at this little montage put together by the folks at Grabian.
Promise to put the law before family.
I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Letting the world know that he will not wipe away the decision of 12 of his son's peers.
Was asked directly, and he has said he wouldn't pardon his son if he gets convicted.
Let's wait and see what happens if he loses.
Yeah, but he said it.
He's going to get pardoned by his dad. There's no question about that.
The president has ruled out pardoning his son.
Major commitment from the president, accepting the outcome of the trial and also pledging not to pardon his son.
So the challenge for him is really to continue to live up to his values when it was really personal, and he did that today.
It seems like a pretty normal, straightforward answer, but it takes new weight when we see what Trump is saying about the outcome of his trial, what we're hearing from other Republicans who say they don't accept the jury's verdict here in New York.
The contrast is profound. To sit there and say, well, I'm not going to intervene in the legal process, and I wouldn't pardon my son. One side, Democrats and Joe Biden protecting the justice system. And on the other, Republicans and Trump protecting Trump.
Our current president of the United States has so much respect for the law that he has said he would not pardon his son. I mean, again, it's all about the contrast.
President Biden saying, I will respect whatever this jury decides, versus right. Donald Trump after he was convicted on 34 counts, saying the entire system is rigged against him.
Their latest attack has been that Joe Biden has politicized and weaponized the DOJ, right? That was the whole argument around Donald Trump's conviction. And this week, of course, Hunter Biden was found guilty, and Joe Biden has very clearly said he would not pardon his son, he would not commute his sentence. How stark is this difference? I mean, how can Republicans keep making this argument now that Joe Biden has really put it out there? Where's Hunter? And he stood there in a courtroom, flanked by his family, and he's accepted his sentence.
He is not pardoning his son, which he could do. These are federal charges. Right. He is not doing that. He is not doing it because he is living what it means to have a rule of law in this country. Yeah. And if you want to know if he believes it, you could actually see what is happening with his own son.
The president, Anderson, has been really clear that he is going to accept the outcome of the trial no matter what happens.
So Joe Biden's gotten asked about, talking about law and order. He's gotten asked if he would pardon his son. He has said no. On the other side, you've got Donald Trump, who has said that he will pardon the January 6th insurrectionists. Yeah. They're not even his sons. They're just sons of bitches.
Washington said, I am not running again, because he understood the self-restraint was absolutely essential to this country, so you don't have a king. He did not pardon his son. He did not order the Department of Justice to say, don't prosecute my son. So impressive.
Could have ordered the Justice Department to halt the prosecution of Hunter Biden, according to this court. Everyone understands he's a decent man.
I think Joe Biden has a chance here to stand up for the rule of law, to say the law is the law, no matter who it is, no matter if it's Trump or Biden. And remember, part of Trumpism's dangerousness is that it tears down institutions, important institutions of our democracy. So there is an opportunity here for Biden to say, the jury found him guilty. This is how it's supposed to work. Period, paragraph, end of story.
Have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes.
As I said last week, I will accept the outcome of this case and will continue to respect the judicial process as Hunter considers an appeal. You know, the president said he won't touch it. He said he's not going to pardon his son. And it seems that Merrick Garland let it go through. How can the Justice Department be weaponized against Trump when all of that is happening?
Democrats stand for the rule of law. Remember, law and order. And we've been saying that Trump's not above the law. Hunter Biden's not above the law. No one is above the law. And it is amazing to see the stark contrast between how Democrats handled today and how Republicans handled this whole thing over the last couple of weeks.
For years, these conservatives have been crowing about a politicized Justice Department, Biden politicizing it, and so on. What happened today? The Justice Department convicted the president's own son, his only living son. You heard the president say he would accept the outcome of the case. I know no other word for that, but presidential.
Mm-hmm. He even went so far as to say he wouldn't pardon his son. That's how much respect he has for the system.
The president has said that he will not pardon his son. What did you think of that?
I thought it was extraordinary. I mean, it was a moment of just moral clarity on the part of Joe Biden, and couldn't have been in, starker contrast to the way Donald Trump has handled his own conviction.
He could still pardon him. He said he won't do that. All of that conduct, given that it's his son, is kind of, we should pause for a moment and think about how unbelievable that is. In a million years, if the shoe were on the other foot and Donald Trump was facing the prospect of his son being prosecuted by a Biden, if I had been held over, a Biden holdover or Obama holdover prosecutor, not in a million years would that have happened. So, some of the people on the right, the people who support Donald Trump, are trying to cast this as some clever ops program.
Yeah. Hunter Biden was found guilty by a jury of his peers, just like Donald Trump, because this is our justice system at work. The divide here is stunning, and it's a great reminder that one political party remains committed to the rule of law and the other doesn't.
Joe Biden has already proven he's willing to stand up for the rule of law in a way that we could all never imagine Donald Trump to do.
Pretty emphatic over the last few days that he does not plan to pardon or commute his son. What that really is him saying is, I don't plan to use the powers of the office, the powers of the presidency, to provide private relief for my family. In a sense, he's staking out a pretty bright line between being, as he says, a president and a dad. And that's not just an emotional expression. He's in effect saying, I don't think that I don't have a right, even if it's legal, and God knows it must be tempting, to use this power in a way that is not available to so many other Americans facing similar kinds of struggles. There's a kind of old school sort of flinty core to his conception of how you are to be in the system, how you are to be as a person, a moral person, and ultimately how to contend with questions of power. One of the things that anybody who spends time around Joe Biden comes to know is that he's had this long-running focus on how much he is bothered by abuses of power.
Will accept the verdict no matter what it is, and that he has ruled out pardoning his own son. Contrast that from what we hear from Donald Trump. And again, we have to underline, in no uncertain terms, President Biden saying, I will accept the outcome. I will accept what the jury decides here. That's the way our legal system works. And no, I will not pardon my own son if he is convicted.
And the contrast is so clear in terms of decency and principle and transactional guidance in terms of how you view the world.
It is still a good day for the United States that this conviction is a prime example of the way our judicial system is supposed to work. Even President Biden saying in a statement that he would respect the outcome of this case. Those words so completely contrast with what his opponent, now a convicted felon himself, continues to say about the U.S. courts.
The contrast to how Trump has behaved, how Trump has treated the rule of law. This was a good day for the system, good day for sort of America as an example of how the rule of law should work.
President Biden told David Muir that he would absolutely accept the verdict, whatever it was, and that he would not pardon his son, regardless. And today he said the same thing in a statement. Meanwhile, Donald Trump comes out and calls the justice system completely unfair. What do you think of that contrast?
There's the contrast of two different
men.
Here is Joe Biden, who has lost a son who served honorably in the armed forces, who now has basically said, I will sacrifice my surviving son's future. I will allow him to serve a prison term if that's what's determined, because that is what the rule of law demands.
The president announces that he will not pardon his son. Do you think ordinary Americans give enough thought to how this system is a miracle, a gift to this country, a gift to democracy?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? The rule of law. We are seeing a living embodiment. In fact, you've seen this guy a couple times now in that montage. Let me play one more. This is Andrew Weissman, who is an NYU law professor. This is Andrew Weissman, who is an MSNBC legal expert, legal contributor. Here's Weissman's statement on the whole thing.
What is before us is a president who is living the rule of law. He is living it in the most personal way. He is not pardoning his son, which he could do. These are federal charges. Right. He is not doing that. He is not doing it because he is living what it means to have a rule of law in this country. Yeah. And if you want to know if he believes it, you could actually see what is happening with his own son. I'm not saying that he should get credit for it because it is the right thing to do.
That's the norm, but Trump is beneath it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's that the idea that you can't see it, or is that really what's going on? Or when you can see what he is actually living by is his own son is being prosecuted, and he is allowing the norms that are required to live in a democracy to go forward.
I mean, these people greatly strung themselves out over a barrel for Joe Biden. Now, again, there was all political calculation in this. I don't think any of them were probably overly impressed with Joe Biden and, his defense of democracy. But that's what you gotta say when you're trying to help a guy get elected to the presidency. The problem with doing that is, if he goes back on that, you have wasted your credibility. It's all been blown to smithereens. Which is, of course, what happened. Joe Biden going out there saying himself, no one is above the law. Then issuing a pardon that says, well, actually, I'm above the law, and since I'm above the law, I'm going to make my son above the law. Okay, and that's defending democracy. That's defending our institutions. That's a living embodiment of all of these great values that you just heard all those folks in media. So there's a lot of egg all over a lot of faces. And I'm just sitting here saying, I can't believe that anyone was surprised by this. There was a tweet also from John Harwood. John Harwood used to be on CNN. I think he lost his job there, lost his show. And he goes over, he's done some work for some other organizations, but now he has his own stuff. He calls himself an independent journalist. And John Harwood actually said this. This is June 13th of 2024. People who insist Biden will pardon Hunter after specifically ruling it out are telling on themselves. They can't imagine, he says. Get this, you know exactly who he's talking about, yes? Of course you do. He's talking about Trump supporters. People who like Donald Trump. They can't imagine someone acting on principle and keeping his word. So you get what Harwood's saying here. Again, another guy sticking his neck way out for President Biden. Trying to help him get reelected, also jabbing Donald Trump and attacking Donald Trump's supporters. Saying the only reason that people are telling you that Joe Biden's going to pardon Hunter. I mean, Joe Biden has said he's not going to do it. That's what Harwood's saying. Biden has said he's not going to do it. So the people who are saying that he is, it's because they know if Trump was in this situation, Trump would. And they just don't understand somebody who acts on principle and actually keeps their word. Okay. Let me just make this very clear to Mr. Harwood. Well, to anyone. We can imagine, you and I can imagine, someone acting on principle and someone keeping their word. We ourselves try to be those people, to act on principle and keep our word. We go to church with people that we know act on principle and who keep their word. We work in our workplaces with people who act on principle and we know keep their word. People in our families, we know act on principle and keep their word. In fact, a lot of the people in my life, I would say to Mr. Harwood, they act on principle and they keep their word. So it's not that I can't imagine someone acting on principle and keeping his word. That's not the issue at all. The issue is I can't imagine someone in politics, someone who has used and abused people to climb the ladder of power. And yeah, of course, that's Joe Biden, but that's the vast majority of people, certainly in presidential politics. You don't get to that level unless you've used and abused some people along the way. So it's not that I can't imagine someone acting on principle and keeping their word. No, I can imagine a lot of people. I can't imagine someone in presidential politics doing it. I can't imagine someone with the reputation of Joe Biden doing it. I can't imagine them acting on principle and keeping their word. Look, we make heroes out of these people in politics because we separate into our teams. And by the way, I've been as guilty of it as anyone else. I'm not just pointing fingers and saying those people out there. Man, I would defend George W. Bush in those days after 9/11. I'd go on the radio and defend George W. Bush, anything the guy said. And luckily, he didn't go too far off the reservation, but some of his big government policies, the Patriot Act, and the domestic spying that came from all of that, No Child Left Behind, some of these massive big government things, I defended it. Of course I did, because he's on my team. And George W. Bush is a good man. He's not a liar. He's not going to manipulate things, not going to do any of that. That's what we do. We make heroes out of these people that we don't know, even when we know, and they're constantly exposed and they're constantly proven to be the most craven people among us. That's why I'm saying, for people who aren't caught up in all of that, and I know most of us are, most people are, but you look at a guy like Joe Biden, whose entire political career, whose entire career in public service, I mean, this guy's wife dies in an accident. If I remember, it was a car accident. Might have been something else. But his wife dies, and he makes the decision then to use the fame, the attention that came from that. He's going to seize on that and run for office. And he leaves his boys at home to grieve their mother. I don't think a great decision there. He loses one of his sons, Beau Biden. He loses one of his sons, and then he chooses to run for president and do all of this other stuff. He's got a history of plagiarism. He's got a history of exaggerations and fabrications and injecting himself into historical moments that he was never a part of, making up sensational stories that don't even make sense, corn pop and leg hair and everything else. And I look at a guy like that, and then I look at that montage of people saying, oh, what a man of integrity and a man of his word, and the two don't go together. That's why I'm saying this is the least, for somebody that isn't caught up in the political stuff, somebody that isn't caught up in the political obsession and the tribalism and all of that, and you just look at things from the outside, you just use common sense. Why would anyone look at Joe Biden? Why would anyone look at the man that he has been, his public character, and come to the conclusion, no, this guy's going to be a rock, a pillar for principle and the rule of law? I don't get it. And now There are some media that are trying to say, well, no, I mean, this is justified. He changed his mind because of this, because he knows Trump's coming in. That's why he changed his mind. But there are others who are just really upset about the whole thing. I stuck my neck out for you, Joe. And then you make me look like a fool. And obviously you just saw the montage. Yeah, a lot of them look like absolute fools. How does Andrew Weissman, that NYU professor, he's living example of this, how does he go back into a lecture hall at NYU? He must rely on the knowledge that all of those people that are going to NYU have been properly inculcated and surrounded with progressivism, the religion of progressivism, so that even though they know his sins, Weissman's sins, even though they know he's done this, they won't hold it against him. That has to be the only way you show your face after something like that. But all these people, how did they not see it? How did they not know that it was going to happen? Constantly, we see these folks are the most craven among us. Here's why I say this is the least surprising decision, and it's amazing to me that people are flabbergasted. This is the same administration, the Biden administration, that told us all that inflation was transitory. Remember when Janet Yellen said that? She now says, man, I wish I hadn't said that. Because it wasn't. They said that, but they knew it wasn't true. This is an administration that saw the epic disaster of our withdrawal from Afghanistan and continue to think if they just keep telling people it was a success, eventually people will just forget what happened and believe it was a success. You just say it often enough and people will believe it. So they didn't tell the truth about that. They didn't tell the truth about inflation, even though they knew the truth. They knew what was happening at the border. Look, if news cameras from Fox News can get down there and show everybody what's going on, the White House knows what's going on. But yet they would consistently say the border is as secure as it's ever been. So everyone knew that wasn't true, but they were saying it. This administration wasn't honest with anybody when they said that Biden was healthy and he was stable. I mean, that was the furthest thing from the truth, but they said it. They said he wasn't going to drop out of the race. This administration stressed that he's in it to win it, and he's in it for good. And he would not be withdrawing. And that wasn't true. So I'm saying if you have a history here of dishonesty in this administration, whether it's dishonesty about inflation, dishonesty about Afghanistan, dishonesty about the border, dishonesty about Biden's health, dishonesty about whether Biden's going to stay in the race or not, why is anyone sitting here just dumbfounded? Well, they were dishonest about Joe pardoning Hunter. Huh? Couldn't have seen that happening. Listen, I don't mean to be overly cynical. I just want us to be realists. I want us to acknowledge what is as plain as the nose on the end of our face, and this is what it is. Politicians, which are people who have access to power, or they are people pursuing access to power. This is what happens. Because of the axiom that power corrupts. Politics does too. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. People with power, like politicians, they don't have to be like this, but they are. And the insistence that so many people have on pretending, well, that's true about those people, but not my team. Man, that's what leads to this kind of epic humiliation that you're seeing all of these media types that convince themselves, apparently, that Joe Biden really was a man of honor and integrity and rule of law, and he believed in our institutions. No. Why? Why do you believe that? There's no evidence for it. Believe in something that has evidence. And the evidence was clearly saying, this guy doesn't tell the truth. This guy will abuse and use people and positions in order to advance himself and get what's good for him. Well, how's that going to play out with the Hunter Biden situation? You know how it's going to play out. So don't go out there and say otherwise. A lot of people wearing a lot of egg on a lot of faces. To me, this was always going to happen. And I think anybody in the back of their mind should have known the same. Your thoughts welcome. You can tell me if you knew it. Peter@peterheck.com. That's Peter@peterheck.com. Those of you who are up for After Hours with me here, coming up this evening in After Hours, I've got a great Friday 5 again for us. But beyond the Friday 5, there continues to be things that surface. There continue to be things that surface that remind me this is why Trump won. As unlikely, as inexplicable as it may seem to some, there are an epic number of signs and indicators as to why Donald Trump won this election. There was something that just happened that I want to, well, actually a couple things that just happened that I'm going to point out in the After Hours section for our paid subscribers well, to me, perfectly tell the tale of the tape. Exactly why this happened the way that it did. So that'll come up for them. Those of you who are free subscribers, I want you to know there's a special coming up as Christmas gets closer. It's not going to be an all December thing like it's been before. There's going to be a small window of time where you can get a discount to join us and be part of our paid subscriber community heading into 2025. I want to make that a possibility. I know dollars are tight during the holiday years. Some of you, the holiday weeks, but there are some of you out there who are already subscribers. Maybe you're thinking about a gift subscription. There is coming a time very soon, and we'll put all the information out there, a small window where you can get in at a discounted amount. And I want to make that a possibility for folks who want to take advantage of it. So we'll be doing that. I'll let you know soon the details on that. For those of you who are free and are staying free right now, more power to you. And I'll see you next week. Those of you who are paid subscribers, After Hours comes up in just a little bit. I'll see you there. The HECKPHIRE only burns because of loyal friends and supporters of this ministry. All of these are people and groups that I know personally and trust implicitly. I can't say enough good things about my friend Jonathan at Hartman Family Farms, about my bank, First Farmers Bank and Trust, my lawn care team at True Land Equipment, my insurance company at Norris Insurance, the place where I buy and lease all of my vehicles, McGonigal GM Buick. In main attraction hair, nobody else touches this head. Stevens Machine, my mechanic at Terrell's Auto Service, my longtime realtor, the Wyman Group. And certainly so much can be said for those fighting for family values in the public square, like the Indiana Family Institute and Indiana Right to Life. Please support them all and thank them.